Hello, namaste. I wanted to share a little bit more about my Intro to Buddhism course that I did at Kopan monastery, where I studied for 10 days among two beautiful, wise monks, Geshe Tengu and Namjong. And then we also had our meditation teacher, Francesca. When we opened up the course, they started with sharing, when we study Buddhism, we are actually learning about ourselves. And I think this is such a beautiful thing to remember because it really welcomes everyone into the practice of Buddhism. It's a philosophy, it's wisdom that we can all use to better our lives in the pursuit of happiness, joy, authentic connection with ourselves and with others. So, as I go through some of my notes from the course, I wanted to share with you things that really stuck out for me because, like I said, they're things that are really going to support us on our journeys. So, let's dive in. So, first, we started with the 5 hypotheses of Buddhism. So, first, people want happiness rather than suffering, right? We all know it. We're all, whether it's like we want a partner, we want a house, we want a car, we want a different job, we want a vacation. What is this for? It's all in the pursuit of a deeper happiness, a better connection. 2, we have been on a quest of this happiness our whole lives, right? So from the time we were born, we start crying because why? We want maybe our mother's breast milk because what? That's going to make us happy as a baby, right? So we're constantly wanting. We want to buy this thing because we think it will give us happiness. We want to travel somewhere because we think it will give us happiness. 3, most activities focus on the external world. So when we first start this journey of life, our lives, we are focused on external pleasures, right? Getting something from without, getting a promotion in our job, focusing on the external rather than the internal. At some point, 4, we realize that the external world isn't enough, right? So at some point along our journey, we recognize, okay, this isn't cutting it anymore. There's probably something else to this equation. And then 5, we recognize that we must go within to attain authentic happiness. And I found this really interesting because when I first started my pursuit of happiness journey, for those of you who have been with me I started in 2020 where I, for a year, went within to find authentic happiness. And so this is something that I think we all kind of practice without realizing it when we awaken to the truth that, okay, there's something more here that I might be missing. So Buddhism is also rooted in compassion. How they describe compassion is wishing others be freed from suffering. So truly, with your whole heart, wishing that others be freed from suffering. Not necessarily pitying someone else, but truly wishing them freedom. Just as you wish yourself freedom, right? We wish ourselves happiness. We're on this pursuit of happiness and joy. And how can we wish that same prayer for everyone else around us, all sentient beings, not just our mother, not just our family, but all people, strangers on the street, people who have done us wrong in the past. And actually, a piece of Buddhism that they taught us is recognize all sentient beings as your mother, which is a really hard concept to grasp, I thought, because to recognize like a mosquito as your mother is literally what they taught us. To recognize a homeless person on the street as once your mother, maybe in a past lifetime. So we're going to move forward with this because I thought that one thing that really stuck out to me was the false view of I. So the false view of I is where we really start to kind of get caught up in our suffering. So the root of our afflictions is the false view of I. First, we have a sense of I, and then comes the sense of an other, right? Which mean we can rid our suffering because it all comes from the false view of the mind, the false view of ourselves. Okay, stick with me. So they gave an example. If a child is afraid of a monster in a dark closet, what do? We go to the closet, we flicker on the light, and we open the door. And then by doing that, you change the false view. the false belief, ridding the fear and the suffering from the child by showing them what's the true reality, right? And this is why we say all best things are on the other side of fear, because there we actually find the truth that's connected with this rather than attaching it to our perception, right? And our perception is based on our causes and conditions of our specific life, right? And that's why when we can find a little bit more compassion, because if you were in my shoes, you would have my exact causes and conditions to have my beliefs, my personality traits, like all of that. And if I was in your shoes, I would take on your causes and conditions, your experiences, to see directly through your eyes. So I thought this was really, really interesting, because if we can connect with that false view of I, then we can rid ourselves of this eternal suffering. So ridding ourselves from this eternal suffering is what we call samskara. So samsara. Samskara are the grooves in your mind. Samsara is what they believe to be the root of our suffering. We are living in a world of samsara. We are living in a constant being born and reborn in this way that we are stuck in a cycle of suffering. And so there's this really famous art piece that's here in Nepal. And this is the wheel of life. You can see that the God, I should say, of death is kind of clenching around this wheel. And it's showing that all beings within this wheel are stuck under his spell, right? You are stuck in this wheel of being born, dying, and reborn in this wheel, whether you're in a lower realm or a higher realm. So I understand that like some people might not fully connect with this whole idea, but I really like taking it in a way of a psychological state of mind. So not necessarily that you're being born into hell, a hell realm, like the hot hells, or the animal realm is even known as a hell, but rather a state of mind. There's a hell realm known as the hungry ghosts, who are just greedy. The more and more and more they get, they can never be quite satisfied. And that could potentially be, when which I've been guilty of before, when we can never be satisfied by all the things that we are getting, right? We get the job, but we're still not satisfied. We get the boyfriend, but we're still not satisfied, right? We're constantly needing more. So let's see, what else do we want to share here? So Buddha's journey was really interesting. I didn't know a lot about the actual Buddha before coming here. I've seen statues all over different yoga studios and things of that nature, but to actually learn about his life was really fascinating. So Buddha started as a prince, and he was in his castle, and one day he escaped from his castle to go out and see the village around him. And when he went out into the village, there were the four great sights that he saw. And the four great sights, I don't know if I'll be able to find it right away, but the four great sights included someone dying, someone that was sick, and someone that was aging. And then there was one more that I can't remember. But basically, by seeing these, he went back to his castle and asked his father, the king, can you fix this? Can you fix these people that are suffering? And his father was like, no, that's basically just life, right? And obviously I'm paraphrasing. And so the Buddha's like, okay, well, how can we get out of this suffering then if that's just life, right? So he went on a quest to pursue enlightenment. So Buddha was 35 years old when he reached enlightenment, and he's known to reach enlightenment while he's sitting under a Bodhi tree, which you see a lot of them here. I actually think I have a leaf from a Bodhi tree somewhere in my notebook. So there's these little like heart-shaped leaves from the Bodhi tree. And so he's known to reach enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. And something that was so fascinating is that when he reaches enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he then, instead of going right back into the town to help others reach enlightenment, he goes into the forest for 7 weeks. And when he goes into the forest for 7 weeks, this kind of shows us how sacred and intentional we must be as we acquire more wisdom on this path. I feel like sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too, especially in the West, we can learn things and immediately want to go share them with the world. But to allow ourselves to deepen into it, to integrate, to recognize what this really means for ourselves and how we can really use this tool to support others. So after those 7 weeks, he goes back out and helps others attain that same enlightenment and nirvana that they're looking for, or at least get closer to it along the path. And all of these tools that he's used today are what we connect with now in learning Buddhism. So throughout the course, we use the lamb rim. So the image that I showed you came from the lamb rim. And this is the main text. I shouldn't say the main text, but this is the main text that we use at our monastery. I don't know if all Buddhists use this text. There's a few different ones, especially with different lineages. But this is what I kind of focused on and learned for 10 days at the monastery. In understanding the false view of I, we also went into understanding a lot about impermanence, a lot about death, again, the causes and conditions of who we are, how something actually comes to be, and what is true. What is true for ourselves, and how can we release ourselves from the suffering of samsara and attain enlightenment? And the really beautiful thing is they do try and make it accessible. There's something called bodhicitta, which is enlightened mind, and we're all known to have this Buddhahood within us. All of us, all sentient beings have this Buddhahood within us. There's a plane going overhead. I don't know if you can hear it. And since we all have this Buddhahood, that means that any one of us can attain enlightenment. Even the mosquito, right? Even the person on the street. And that's why we need to recognize all beings as equal. Because when we start to self-cherish ourselves over others, we start to miss the point. We start to realize that we are self-cherishing rather than finding equality among all. And he also, one of our teachers, Namjong, kept giving this example of when something is mine versus other, right? It's like if there was an example of like, oh, someone's car got hit, right? Like, oh, sucks. But then when you find out like, oh, it was my car, oh, now I have a problem, right? And so how can we find equality? How can we start to understand all beings as equal? How can we, again, find that compassion for others just like we find it for ourselves? We want to rid ourselves from suffering. But how about not even thousands, way more than that, millions of other people and beings that are also suffering along with us? So something that you can take away as a practice that I found really beautiful, anytime that you sit down to do a meditation, we are always started after like a couple minutes of breath and relaxing the body. What I usually call finding your intention, we always called setting our motivation. And when we set our motivation for any of our meditations, it usually started with something like, I'm engaging in this meditation to develop my mind to its highest potential so that I can serve myself and all sentient beings. And towards the end of the meditation, we set a dedication, again, a dedication to all sentient beings, a dedication to ourselves and our development and our growth. And then sometimes I would do a dedication to people that I really truly love or have had some meaningful connection with, or my teachers who taught me the meditation, and dedicate that out to them. So that's a practice that I've taken with me from this course that I'll continue to do in my meditations. But I hope this little 15-minute 5-minute clip taught you something maybe new about Buddhism, or maybe just reminded you something about yourself, your journey, and your practice. But thanks for tuning in with me. I'll share some more as I go along the way, and I will let you know what's next.